origin may or may not have contributed to your shame. Now, we are going to do this in a way not to blame our family of origin or caretakers, but simply to identify that because it is a factor in our lives. So first of all, what is your family of origin? Let's sort of define that. Family of origin means the unit you were raised in. Those people who cared for you when you were little, took care of all of your needs. This might not be biological. This is the place of your first social contacts, where you learn how to interact with other people and also with the world. This is also where you learn how to live, like, in general. Your family of origin is also where you encounter sharing emotions and learning how to trust other people and yourself. And if you were raised in a healthy family of origin, most likely you have been able to make friends easily and connect well with others. You probably also developed self-confidence along the way, right? And determination. If you were highly supported growing up, you likely felt quite comfortable with yourself and even do now as an adult. However, if your upbringing was laced with trauma or disconnected relationships, or maybe you had struggles with your just own healthy adult development, you may develop a struggle with symptoms like anxiety, depression, or low self-esteem. So frankly, these can happen for many folks, even in what seems like healthy families of origin. So just because humans are flawed, right? And life is inherently hard. So oftentimes these things will happen even in the best of circumstances. Some studies have shown that fathers with a history of depression and permissive parenting before the age of 3 predicted later shame and guilt in children. Also, parents' marital dissatisfaction was a contributor to those things as well. There doesn't need to be abuse or neglect in order for shaming behaviors to go on in a family. And that's really why I wanted to talk about this. Because children internalize certain words or ways of being. They internalize them differently, even within their own family, among siblings. For example, if you spilled your water at the dinner table when you were young and your caregiver scolded you harshly, and they included things like name calling, this can lead to a lot of feelings of shame, and usually that's a continuous behavior. Maybe the love in your family was conditional. You were loved or rewarded only when you performed well in school or in sports, or you had some other achievement. If the family had deeply guarded secrets that you were expected to keep, that can lead to feelings of shame later in adulthood. I remember one time when I brought my report card home, I had mostly A's and B's, and I had one C. My dad made a comment that if that C had been a B, they would have been good grades. Seems pretty harmless, right? And as a parent now who really values education deeply, I can understand where he was coming from with that comment, because I have probably likely said very similar things. And frankly, it was not likely made knowingly to hurt me in any way. It was just a comment. But at the time, I internalized that, and it created shame and a belief that I wasn't good enough that really stayed with me until I got into therapy later when I got sober. So I just wanted to use that example to kind of show you how this can happen. Shame can develop in response to frequent criticism or compassion or disapproval, or growing up in a house where feelings were not allowed. Maybe you were bullied for how you look, or making mistakes resulted in someone getting hurt along the way. All of those things will set a child up for carrying the burden of shame. None of this is said, again, to blame your family of origin in any way. It's just simply to inform us on where it comes from. For most of us, when we look back, we can see where our caregivers did the very best they could with what they had at the time. And in some cases, This just isn't good enough, right? Those are the ones with the most extreme dysfunction. The way out is not to stay in the past, but rather to accept what has happened to you and then decide to take action in your life today. Maybe you need to create healthy boundaries. If you need help with that, I have a little course called Creating Healthy Boundaries. It will help you begin to trust and love yourself fully. I'll leave a link to it below. Make sure you're checking in with those boundaries on a regular basis, because there are 5 main areas where they show up in life, and I really want you guys to be honing in on this. We all know we can't choose our families, and often our caregivers are carrying the burden of trauma that was passed down to them from their parents, right? We can't change what happened, but we can make a decision to move forward and take action today. So this involves a lot of self-compassion, acceptance, and a lot of patience. In the next video, I will share with you 5 ways to rewrite your shame story that you grew up with and change that outcome in your adulthood. So I'll see you then.